I didn't realize the door wasn't fully closed until I heard the hinge breathe a slow, eerie sigh that drifted into my room, like a warning I couldn't answer. I lay there paralyzed on my childhood bed, my limbs cemented to the mattress, my breath shallow and ragged as if someone else owned my lungs. A stranger's footsteps crossed the hallway, measured heavy, unhurried, each step landing like a countdown I couldn't stop. I wanted to scream, wanted to sit up, wanted to run. But the world inside my body had gone dark, and the world outside the cracked door was getting darker by the second. Then I heard her voice. Soft. Calm. Venom in silk. "Just make it look natural," Maya whispered to someone standing beside her, someone whose shadow stretched across the floorboards toward me. As the stranger stepped into my room, blocking the faint yellow glow from the hallway, I realized with a cold certainty that whatever was happening tonight wasn't an accident. It was planned. And I was the target. I used to believe evil announced itself with violence, shouted, slammed doors, broken things, broken people. But the truth was quieter. It crept. It masked itself as concern. It slipped poison into a teacup and smiled while you drank it. 24 hours before that stranger crossed my doorway, I was still living a normal life in Oregon, one I'd built piece by piece to stay as far from Wyoming as I could. My world was spreadsheets, warehouse routes, logistics, schedules, clean numbers, clean answers. I worked hard, paid my bills, minded my business. And I avoided going home unless it was absolutely necessary. But necessary came anyway. My mother had slipped on the back porch and injured her hip. Maya panicked, sent a dozen texts, and called me twice. It wasn't like her to ask me for help. Maya rarely reached out unless she wanted something. Yet her voice trembled in a way that cut through my skepticism. "Julia, can you come home?" Just for a few days, she'd asked. I agreed before I thought better. That was my mistake, the first one. The second came 2 days later when a letter arrived from the IRS claiming I had failed to report $85,000 in income I never earned. At first I laughed, assuming it was clerical confusion. But beneath the laughter was a shiver I couldn't explain. Still, I told myself I'd deal with it after Wyoming, after checking on my mother, after surviving being around my family without sinking back into old patterns. Wyoming welcomed me with its usual cold indifference. Our family ranch stretched across the plains like a place suspended in time, quiet house red barn fence lines that seemed to divide more than land. I stepped inside the house and waited for warmth. It didn't come. My father barely looked up from the table when I arrived. "So you finally made it," he said. No hug, no smile, no surprise. That was his way. Samuel Ramirez didn't raise daughters so much as he raised expectations, silent ones, impossible ones. Maya was the golden one, obedient, cheerful, eager to please. I was the spare part, the difficult one, the girl who left and never looked back. That was his script, and he recited it often. My mother Clara greeted me with soft worry in her eyes. She always looked like she was apologizing for something. Maybe she was. She clung to my arm as I helped her through the hallway, her frame smaller than I remembered, her steps uncertain. "You're so sweet to come," she whispered. "Your sister's been a blessing too." Blessing! The word stung more than it should have. Maya had a talent for appearing helpful for 20 minutes and disappearing for 20 days. Over the next few hours, I settled into the guest room, the room I used growing up, though it never felt like mine. Same faded curtains, same creaking dresser, same sense that if I breathed too loud, someone would punish me for it. At dinner, I mentioned the IRS letter casually, like it wasn't gnawing on the edges of my mind. Maya froze mid-bite. My father's hand stopped halfway to his glass. "What letter?" he asked, voice too flat. "Something about unreported income," I said. "Probably nothing." My mother stared at her plate. Maya's fork scraped too hard against the dish. My father recovered and waved it off. "Government makes mistakes all the time. Don't worry about it." But as I lay in bed that night replaying the moment, something felt off. Like the air shifted in the room. Like I'd said something I wasn't supposed to say. The next day I tried to settle into a rhythm, helping Mom move around, cooking meals, cleaning. Maya fluttered in and out with her usual bright facade, but her smiles were stretched thin, her movements restless, and every time I caught her eye, she looked away as if studying something behind me. Late afternoon I stepped outside for fresh air. The Wyoming wind bit through my sweater as I leaned on the old porch railing. My father stood by the truck with his back turned, speaking sharply into his phone. Yes. Friday. She won't be a problem, he said. Then quieter. No, she won't remember. Something in my stomach twisted. He hung up before I could hear more. I told myself I was overreacting. My father wasn't warm, but he wasn't cruel. Just distant, hard, traditional in the worst ways. But not dangerous. At least that's what I believed. That night, while the sky dimmed over the fields, Maya tapped on my door gently. I brought you tea, she said. Chamomile, her favorite, not mine. You've been working all day, she said softly. You look exhausted. This will help you sleep. She set the cup on my nightstand, her smile trembling at the edges. Her eyes glistened not with kindness but with something brittle, something fearful. I should have asked her what was wrong. I should have noticed her hands shaking. I should have said no. But I never wanted trouble, never wanted to give my father more reasons to say I was difficult. So I swallowed my pride in the tea. Within minutes my pulse slowed. 30 minutes later my arms felt like sandbags. By the time I tried to stand, the floor tilted beneath me. I collapsed onto the bed. The room blurred into smeared lights. My heartbeat thudded somewhere far away like it belonged to another body. My fingers twitched once, then stopped responding entirely. I tried to call for help. No sound came out. My tongue was a stone in my mouth. Through the crack in the door I heard whispering, Maya's voice. Then a man's. Is she out? He asked. She will be, Maya said. Her voice wasn't full of triumph. It was full of dread. They moved down the hallway, fading into a low murmur I couldn't decipher. Panic clawed at my throat. I tried again to move, to roll, to shout, nothing. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, not Maya's. The door creaked open, revealing a silhouette larger than any man in my family, tall shoulders, a dark jacket, breath quick and uneven. He stepped inside as if he had done this before. He knelt beside me, 2 fingers pressed against my neck, checking for a pulse. His touch wasn't violent, just clinical, efficient, like someone performing a task he didn't want to understand. She's still breathing, he muttered. The dosage was too strong. Dosage. A word meant for medication or poison. A cold wave rolled through me. I tried to scream, but only air leaked from my throat. He leaned closer. His face was shadowed, but I heard fear in his breathing. I didn't sign up for this, he said softly. This wasn't the deal. The deal? My family had made a deal involving me. He stood abruptly and hurried from the room. I heard Maya rush to him. Just make it look natural, she whispered. Dad said it has to look natural. Dad, my father. The numbness spread up my neck, tightening like invisible hands. The ceiling warped above me as tears pooled in my eyes, tears I couldn't even blink away. I realized something that stole the last bit of warmth from my chest. My sister had left the door open for a stranger to enter. My father had told him what to do, and I was never meant to wake up. But as the darkness swallowed my vision, an ember of something ancient and furious sparked inside me, a stubborn, relentless will I didn't know I still had. If I survived this night, I would find out why they wanted me gone. I would uncover every lie, every betrayal, every truth they buried to erase me. I wasn't dead yet, and as long as I drew even the shallowest breath, I would fight my way back. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the memory of the night before hovered above me like fog, thick, disorienting, impossible to shake. I was alive. I could move again, slowly, stiffly, like someone had poured steel into my veins and forgotten to let it cool. But the panic was still there, pulsing just beneath my skin. I pushed myself upright and sat in the middle of the old guest bed, trying to understand whether everything I remembered, the tea, the paralysis, the stranger, had been real or a fever dream. My hands trembled as I touched my throat where his fingers had pressed. The skin wasn't bruised, but I felt the memory there like a phantom imprint. Nothing about it felt imagined. My door was shut, now fully latched. Someone had come back at some point while I lay unconscious. The thought made me shiver. I forced myself to stand, ignoring the soreness in my legs. My body felt wrong, sluggish, as if whatever had entered my bloodstream hadn't finished leaving yet. I made it to the bathroom sink and splashed cold water on my face. The woman in the mirror didn't look like me, eyes too wide, pupils too large, skin pale with fear. "Get it together," I whispered. I needed a plan. But first, I needed answers. Downstairs, the house was unusually quiet. No clatter of pans from my mother, no pacing footsteps from Maya, no booming voice from my father, only silence, the kind that seemed rehearsed. When I entered the kitchen, Maya was standing by the window scrolling on her phone. She startled when she noticed me. "Oh, Julia. You're up early," she said, too bright, too practiced. I watched her carefully. Did she know I'd regained movement? Did she think I was still supposed to be sedated? "How's Mom?" I asked. Maya's eyes flicked toward the hallway. "Resting. She had a rough night." I poured myself water and tried to ignore the tremble in my hand. "What happened last night?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Nothing, she replied too quickly. "You went to bed early. You were tired from helping Mom." I leaned against the counter. "Did you come into my room?" Her fingers tightened around her phone. "What? No." Why? I held her gaze. She looked away. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask why I was asking. She was waiting to see what I knew. Before I could press further, my father's boots thudded down the hallway. He walked in with the same rigid authority he carried everywhere, as if the house belonged only to him. "Morning," he grunted. "You look better today." "Better." The word chilled me. He was gauging me, not greeting me. I watched the two of them, my father and sister, moving around the kitchen with a kind of stiff choreography like actors in a scene they'd rehearsed. I felt like a stranger in my own childhood home watching a play I didn't audition for. My father picked up the newspaper and lowered himself into his usual chair. "You'll need to stay with your mother today," he said without looking at me. "There are some things Maya and I need to take care of." I didn't ask what things. I didn't trust my voice. Instead, I nodded slowly, my mind racing. He had assumed I was still under whatever they'd given me. He had assumed I wouldn't question him. He assumed I was still the Julia who swallowed everything quietly. He had no idea that woman died sometime between the sip of chamomile tea and the moment a stranger's shadow filled my doorway. After breakfast, I checked on my mother in her bedroom. She lay propped up on pillows, eyes half damp, staring out the window at the pasture. When she turned toward me, something flickered in her gaze, guilt, maybe fear, or something deeper. "How are you feeling?" I asked softly. She managed a small smile. "Better with you here." I sat beside her. "Mom, did something happen last night?" Her fingers tightened around her blanket knuckles, whitening. Her throat bobbed. "Julia." She stopped herself. "Your father doesn't like me worrying too much. He says it's bad for my recovery." I swallowed hard. "That's not what I asked." She looked toward the doorway as if she expected him to appear at any moment. "There are things," she whispered. "Things I'm not supposed to talk about." "Mom," I pressed gently. "I need you to be honest with me." She closed her eyes. A tear slipped down her cheek. "I am trying to keep the peace," she said shakily. "Your father, he can be difficult when things don't go as he expects." That was her answer. Not yes, not no, just fear wrapped in a soft voice. Something twisted painfully in my chest. How long had she lived this way? How long had I pretended not to see it? When I left her room, my heart felt heavier than before. The next few hours passed in a strange, sluggish haze. My body still hadn't recovered fully from whatever sedative they had used on me. My limbs felt heavy. My balance was off. I kept listening for footsteps, whispers, anything that would confirm I wasn't losing my mind. Right around noon, Maya appeared in my doorway unexpectedly. "Hey," she said, her voice a little too chirpy. "Dad and I are going into town to pick up some things for Mom. You'll be here, right?" I stared at her. "Do I have a choice?" She blinked, thrown off for a split second. "Of course you do. I just want to make sure Mom isn't alone." I nodded, though my mind screamed. When they left, I waited exactly 2 minutes before forcing myself down the hallway to my father's office. The door was cracked. Papers were scattered across the desk, not unusual, but something felt intentional, staged almost like they'd left it that way for a reason. My attention snapped to a folder labeled in my father's handwriting, "Julia, Incidents." My breath caught. Inside were pages of notes, photos, and descriptions of supposed unstable behaviors, attributed to me moments from my childhood, twisted into evidence, times I'd cried or gotten overwhelmed, reframed as signs of mental illness. Even an old college absence slip was filed as emotional volatility. I flipped through page after page, horror rising like bile. This wasn't new. This wasn't recent. This was a narrative he had been building for years. At the bottom was a printed form petition for guardianship, Samuel Ramirez versus Julia Ramirez. My hands shook violently. The hearing date stamped at the top: Friday, tomorrow. My father wasn't trying to help me. He wasn't concerned about my mental state. He was preparing to take legal control of my life. A wave of nausea rushed through me. I stumbled back from the desk, nearly tripping over the rug. A surge of dizziness forced me to grab the doorframe to steady myself. As I tried to catch my breath, a faint sound drifted from the hallway, a soft shuffle like someone had stepped just out of sight. I froze, then slowly turned. But no one was there. Still, I felt watched. I closed the office door quietly, forcing my shaking legs to move. My heart hammered against my ribs as I returned to the guest room. The air felt thinner, the walls tighter, as though the house itself knew what was coming. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the file like it was a lifeline and an anchor at the same time. The guardianship petition, the fabricated incidents, the whisper outside my room, the stranger checking my pulse, Maya's tea. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't imagination. It was intentional. It was orchestrated. And it was bigger than I understood. Fear crawled up my spine. As I struggled to steady my breathing, I heard a faint tap on my window. My heart almost leapt out of my chest. I stood, slowly moved the curtain, and expected to see nothing, maybe just a tree branch or the wind. Instead, a small white card was wedged in the seam between the glass and the frame, as if someone had slipped it there. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The card read, "Tyler Boone, Private Investigations." The stranger from last night had a name, and he wasn't just some hired thug. I stared at the card so long my fingertips grew numb. Why would my family hire a private investigator? What exactly had my father told him, and what had Tyler Boone been sent to do to me? I turned the card over. On the back was a handwritten note. Just 3 words: "Get out now." My breath caught. Someone had slipped this into my window while I was alone. Someone who didn't want my father to know I had it. Someone who thought I was in danger. I looked around the room, the walls closing in like a trap. I finally saw clearly. Whatever I thought I knew about my family, my past, my place in this house, it was all wrong. They weren't protecting me. They weren't helping me. They were preparing to erase me. I tightened my grip on the card. If I stayed here one more night, I knew with bone-deep certainty I might not wake up again. And tomorrow's hearing wasn't about guardianship. It was about control, about ownership, about inheritance, about silencing me forever. I sank to the floor and whispered the truth aloud for the first time. They're trying to get rid of me. And now that I knew they'd have to stop me from escaping, one way or another. As the Wyoming wind whipped against the window, rattling the glass, I made a silent vow. If I survived this house tonight, I would expose them all. The guardianship petition lay open on my lap. its legal language slicing through the last remnants of denial I'd been clinging to. I stared at the bold black letters my name printed beneath the words, "Respondent alleged incapacitated person," and felt something deep inside me break. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a paperwork mix-up. This was deliberate. This was structured. This was an attack years in the making. I read the date again. Tomorrow. My father had scheduled my destruction for Friday morning as casually as if he were repairing a fence or ordering feed for the cattle. A cold numbness spread through me, not the drug from before, but a different kind of paralysis, one born from betrayal so sharp it stole your breath. I tried to stand, but my legs shook under me. I gripped the edge of the dresser to steady myself. I needed to confront him. I needed answers. I walked down the hallway, my feet heavy on the wooden boards. When I reached my father's office, he was inside hunched over the desk, rifling through paperwork. He didn't look up when I stepped in. "Dad," I said, my voice unsteady. "What is this?" He didn't turn. "What's what, this petition?" My fingers tightened on the document. "Why did you file for guardianship over me?" Only then did he lift his gaze. He leaned back in his chair, face remarkably calm, almost rehearsed. "You've been struggling," he said. "You're not managing your life well." The words hit like a slap. "That's not true." He shrugged. "IRS letters, money missing, confusion, exhaustion." "We're concerned about you." I echoed. "Or you." His jaw twitched, barely noticeable. "I'm trying to protect you." "No," I said, my voice rising. "You're trying to control me." Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. He stood slow and deliberate, and walked toward me with a steadiness that made my stomach knot. "Julia," he said, voice low. "You've always been emotional, impulsive, hard to reason with. I don't want you making decisions you'll regret." My chest tightened. His tone wasn't angry, it was patronizing, dismissive, like a father educating a child who couldn't understand simple truths. "I'm 34, I whispered. "And still making the same mistakes," he replied. Something snapped inside me. Mistakes like leaving this ranch, mistakes like building my own life instead of staying here under your thumb. His eyes hardened. "You're not well, Julia. You drugged me." His expression didn't change. "Be careful with your accusations." I stared at him, searching for even a flicker of guilt, but found only a cold certainty, the conviction of a man who believed he was right, and that anyone who challenged him was wrong by default. Before I could speak again, Maya appeared in the doorway. "Dad!" "What's going on?" Her gaze flicked to the petition in my hand. She stiffened but didn't look surprised. "Maya," I said slowly, "did you know about this?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Dad said you needed help, that you were overwhelmed, that I needed to be declared incompetent." I snapped. "Is that what he told you?" Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to deny it but couldn't. "You've been stressed, forgetful." "That's not forgetful," I said, shaking the papers. "That's identity theft, fraud, lies your father has been feeding you." The color drained from her face, but she still clung to the script he'd given her. He showed me the bank statements, money missing from their accounts, withdrawals with your name. "I didn't take any money," I said. "You know I didn't." She swallowed hard, but didn't answer. My father stepped back, folding his arms. The posture of someone confident the conversation was already over. "Julia," he said, "you're upset. Why don't you go lie down and rest? We can talk when you're calmer." The same words Maya had used, the same tone, almost identical. A chilling realization slid into place. They were aligned, working together. Whether Maya understood the depth of his lies or not, my father had made sure she saw me as fragile, unstable, unreliable. The perfect daughter to strip of her rights. I backed away from the office, heart pounding. I needed space, airtime to think. But as I turned the corner, I heard Maya's voice behind me, sharp, anxious. She saw the petition, she whispered. "What do we do now?" My father's answer was faint, but I caught it. "Nothing. She can't stop anything at this point." And then softer. She's been unstable for years. Everyone will believe that. I fled to my room, shut the door, and leaned against it as my breath shook out of me. Unstable. They had built that story inch by inch every time I cried as a child, every disagreement, every moment I dared to have my own voice. They twisted them into symptoms. I lifted the edge of the bedspread, searching for the feeling of control in anything familiar. That's when I noticed something on the floor, a card. The same card I'd found earlier from the stranger. I bent to pick it up. Tyler Boone, private investigator. That confirmed it. He wasn't just some hired helper or acquaintance. My father had paid him. But for what? To observe me, to document me. To orchestrate something worse, I sank onto the bed with the card in hand, trying to breathe through the jagged panic. But the more I tried to piece together the fragments T Whispers petitioned Tyler, the more something bigger formed at the edges of my understanding. This wasn't new. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't accidental. This was years of groundwork, an entire narrative architecture built to collapse neatly onto my head. I stood again, rage powering my legs, and walked back toward the hallway, not toward my father's office this time, but toward the kitchen. I needed water, air, something to ground me. When I stepped inside, Maya was leaning over the counter, her back to me. Her shoulders trembled. For a moment I saw the girl she used to be, the one who begged me to braid her hair, who slept in my bed when thunderstorms frightened her. "Maya," I said quietly. She jumped and wiped her eyes before turning. "Julia." "I didn't hear you." "Do you really believe all this?" I asked softly. "That I'm unstable, that I'm stealing, that I need to be controlled?" Her face twisted into something pained. "Dad said you weren't telling us things, that you were hiding money problems, that you were drowning." "Did you ever ask me?" I whispered. She blinked. "Did you ever come to me, not Dad, and ask if I was okay?" Her lips parted, and for the first time guilt flickered in her eyes. "I just wanted to protect our family," she said. "No," I replied gently. "You wanted to protect his version of it." She looked down, shoulders sagging. I stepped closer. "Maya, last night, the tea, what did you think you were giving me?" Her breath hitched. She didn't answer. "Did Dad tell you to do it?" I pressed. She nodded once, barely perceptible. "And you didn't question him?" Her voice cracked. "He said it was something mild. To help you rest. To keep things calm until tomorrow." "Tomorrow," I repeated. "The hearing." She squeezed her eyes shut like she wished she could erase everything. I exhaled shakily, feeling the room tilt around me like the house itself was bending under the weight of what I'd discovered. My father wasn't just trying to control me, he was trying to erase me. As I turned to leave, Maya grabbed my arm, not harshly, but desperately. "Julia, please don't make this worse." I stared at her hand, worse for who she couldn't answer. I walked away, each step heavier than the last. When I reached my room again, I shut the door and slid down against it, gripping the private investigator's card so tightly the edges dug into my palm. I had pieces of the puzzle, but not the picture. I needed more. I needed to understand why. And I needed help. Outside, twilight crept across the fields, long shadows stretching toward the house like warning fingers. The wind howled against the siding, rattling the windows. Then, somewhere deep in the hallway, a floorboard creaked. Not the casual creak of someone passing by. A slow, deliberate shift, like someone standing still. Listening. I held my breath, heart pounding in my throat. No footsteps followed. No door opened. Silence returned. But I knew I wasn't imagining it. Someone in this house was waiting for me to break. Someone was watching for an opportunity. And someone, maybe more than one, needed me silent before morning. I curled my hand tighter around the card and whispered into the dark, "I'm not going down without a fight." The house didn't answer. But the chill that slid under the door told me I didn't have much time. By late afternoon, the house felt too quiet, as if it were holding its breath along with me. The Wyoming light was fading outside, stretching long shadows across the kitchen floor, while Maya hummed softly to herself an unfamiliar tune that sounded rehearsed brittle. She stood at the counter, arranging flowers into a vase, but her hands moved with an eerie precision, like she was trying too hard to imitate calm. I lingered in the kitchen doorway, observing her. Every few seconds she glanced toward the hallway, her shoulders tightening whenever she heard the faintest sound. She wasn't relaxed. She was waiting, watching, preparing. "You want something to drink?" she asked suddenly, without turning around. "No," I said. She nodded, but her fingers trembled around the stems she held. It was the 4th time she'd offered me something to drink today. I scanned the room. The air felt charged, like a storm gathering. Dad's voice echoed faintly from his office, muffled by the closed door, sharp enough that I caught the cadence of irritation, but not the words. My mother sat in her bedroom, knitting weakly, her hands shaking from either pain or fear, I couldn't tell which. The entire house was moving in quiet circles around something I couldn't yet see. Maya finally turned to face me, forcing a smile. "You look tired, Jules. You should rest." "I'm fine," I said, watching her carefully. "Why are you being so attentive today?" She blinked too slowly. "Can't I just care about my sister?" "Of course," I said. "It's just new." For the smallest moment, something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe grief, but then she smoothed it over and stepped closer. "Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Dad said he needs us all to be clear-headed. Clear-headed for what?" She hesitated. "The hearing. You know, for Mom." Her lie fractured in the middle. She knew I knew, but neither of us said the truth aloud. Instead, she touched my arm lightly. "I made chamomile tea earlier. I can heat some up for you." "No," I repeated. Her mouth twitched, just trying to help. She left the kitchen then, but not before slipping something into the drawer beneath the silverware. I didn't miss it. When the hallway was clear, I crossed the room, opened the drawer slowly, and found a small amber bottle half hidden under napkins. The label was foreign, the print tiny, but the word sedativo jumped out like a warning flare. My breath caught. She had been preparing this all day. I shoved the drawer shut just as Mom called weakly from her room. I walked to her, forcing my features into calm. "Sweetheart," she whispered as I entered, "you're working too hard." I sat beside her and gently adjusted her blanket. "I just want to make sure you're okay." Her eyes darted to the doorway. Always the doorway, always checking if he was listening. "Mom," I said softly, "can I ask you something? And I need the truth." She closed her eyes for a long moment before opening them again. "Oh, Julia, I wish things were different." My heart tightened. What is Dad planning? She flinched so violently it startled me. "I can't. I shouldn't." "Did he tell Maya to give me something last night?" Her breath shook. "Julia," she whispered, "please don't make him angry." I reached for her trembling hands. "Mom, I'm not safe here. I need you to be honest." Tears spilled down her cheeks. That alone told me more truth than words ever had. But before she could speak, there was a heavy footstep outside her door. Mom's face went white. She shook her head sharply at me, silently begging me not to say another word. She had lived in fear so long she didn't even recognize it anymore. But I did. Dad's shadow passed the doorway, paused, then continued down the hall. Only after the sound faded did Mom exhale. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice cracking. "I am so sorry." The apology landed like a stone in my chest. It wasn't an admission, but it was close enough. I kissed her forehead, then stepped out before she could say more. Downstairs, the air felt thicker, heavier. At dinner, Dad barely spoke. His gaze flicked over me occasionally with clinical calculation, as if taking notes on my behavior. Maya made small talk, but her voice trembled every time she lifted her fork. When I finished eating, she stood abruptly. "Let me make you some tea," she said. I stared at her. I said I don't want any. She faltered for a moment, then nodded with a sweetness so forced it actually made my stomach twist. of course. Maybe later. But she was already reaching for the kettle. I pushed back from the table. I'm going to lie down. Dad didn't look up. Good idea. You need rest. His tone made my skin crawl. I left the room without another word. Less than 5 minutes later, Maya knocked softly on my half-open door. Julia, I made it anyway, just in case. It'll help calm your nerves. I didn't move from the bed. I don't want it. She stepped inside and placed the cup on my nightstand. Just try it, she whispered. For me. I said no. Her smile cracked for real this time, fear showing through the mask. I'm just trying to help, she said again, voice thin, brittle, desperate. No, I repeated louder. Something in her face hardened, then an old familiar resentment I'd seen throughout our childhood. The look she wore when she wanted Dad's approval and saw me as the obstacle. She stepped back. Fine, whatever. She walked out, leaving the door ajar. I stared at the cup on the nightstand. Steam curled upward slowly, the faint scent of chamomile threading the air. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I lay back, pretending to rest, but every nerve in my body was alert. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway, quiet but purposeful. Maya's whisper followed low and hurried. She's lying down. She's tired. Just do what Dad asked. My throat tightened. The hallway creaked again, and the air shifted as someone larger approached. The door eased open just an inch, just enough for a shadow to slip in. Light from the hall traced the outline of a man, broad shoulders, dark jacket. The same measured footsteps I'd heard the night before. He moved closer. I forced myself to breathe slowly, evenly, as if I were drifting into sleep rather than bracing for danger. Maya's voice came from behind the door. Make sure she's out. He said, this has to look natural. Natural? That was the second time she had used that word. I watched through barely cracked eyelids as the stranger hesitated near my bed. I could feel his uncertainty, the tension in his posture. He rubbed his hand over his jaw, stepping back slightly. This isn't right, he muttered. She's awake. She's moving. The temperature in my veins dropped. She's tired, Maya hissed. She needs it. No, he said firmly. Your dad didn't say anything about this. He told me everything she insisted. We have to make sure she doesn't interfere tomorrow. My pulse hammered in my ears. Hearing it said aloud, interfere felt like confirmation of the nightmare I'd been trying to deny. The man stepped back toward the door as if reconsidering everything. Maya pushed it open wider and glared up at him. Do your job, she whispered. Please, she can't ruin this. Ruin? What exactly were they trying to protect? The stranger looked past her and straight at me, his expression conflicted, almost pained. He shook his head. I didn't agree to sedate anyone, he said. I'm not doing this. Maya grabbed his arm. Dad said you would. Well, I won't, he snapped. Her breath hitched. He's going to be furious. That's your problem, he said, stepping back into the hallway. Maya let out a shaky exhale and leaned against the doorframe, her silhouette trembling. For the first time she looked young, not manipulative or cruel, but terrified, trapped in a lie so big she didn't know how to climb out. Then she looked toward my bed, her eyes narrowing. Julia, she whispered so softly, I almost thought she imagined I was asleep. Please don't make things harder. You always make everything harder. I stayed still, breathing slow, waiting. She lingered a moment more before walking away. I listened to her footsteps fade, then the stranger's. Then the house slid back into that eerie, suffocating silence. My muscles trembled not from weakness but from adrenaline. I opened my eyes, fully staring at the cup of tea still steaming gently on my nightstand. Whatever Maya wanted me to drink, whatever Dad told her to do, their plan hinged on me being too weak, too confused, too sedated to fight back. They thought I was alone. They thought I was powerless. But I'd woken up once, and tonight I was fully awake. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, feet touching the cold floor. If I stayed here until morning, I would lose everything, my freedom, my identity, my future. The tea cooled beside me, untouched. I stood slowly, every movement deliberate. If they wanted this to look natural, then I needed to do the most unnatural thing they could imagine. I needed to run. But first I needed to understand exactly what they were hiding. Tonight wasn't the night I died. Tonight was the night I finally opened my eyes. I woke to darkness so dense it felt physical, like a weight pressing against my body. My eyelids were heavy, but they lifted a fraction of an inch. At first I didn't know where I was. My breath hitched shallow and uneven, and when I tried to move, nothing happened. My limbs were numb, my fingers unresponsive, my legs made of stone. Panic sparked instantly. I wasn't asleep. I wasn't dreaming. I was trapped inside my own body again. The last thing I remembered was refusing Maya's tea, watching her leave the door ajar on her way out. I'd tried to stay awake, to plan, to think. At some point, exhaustion must have pulled me under, and now I was back in the same nightmare with paralysis sinking into my limbs like cold poison. I forced myself to focus on breathing, in, out, slow, quiet. Then I heard footsteps. Not Maya's soft rhythm, not my father's heavy, decisive stride. These were slow, heavy, purposeful. They stopped just outside my room. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure the whole house could hear it. A shadow darkened the crack of light beneath the door. For a moment there was only silence. The kind of silence that felt alive, waiting, deciding. Then the door creaked open. A tall silhouette stepped inside, blocking the faint hallway glow. The man from last night. The stranger moved closer, his outline unmistakable, broad shoulders, dark jacket, cautious steps. He wasn't trying to hide. That scared me more. He came beside the bed and leaned down close enough that I could hear his breath, uneven, uncertain, almost troubled. His hand slid to my throat. 2 fingers pressed lightly against my skin, checking my pulse, assessing, not killing, checking. "You're still breathing," he muttered, voice low and tense. "But this isn't right." His breath shook. His hand trembled. That was new. Last night he had seemed afraid, but tonight he sounded conflicted, like a man caught in something he wanted no part of. "I didn't sign up for this," he whispered. "This wasn't the deal." The words rattled through me. There was a deal. My family made a deal involving me. His fingers lifted from my throat. He stepped back, rubbing a hand over his face as if trying to steady himself. I could only watch from the prison of my unmoving body. Then Maya appeared in the doorway. Her silhouette was smaller, shaking. She looked at him with something like panic that he might refuse. "Is she out?" she asked. He didn't answer at first. Then, "She's breathing, but barely." That was too strong. The pharmacist said it was mild. Dad said he cut her off with a sharp look. "Your dad lied. This isn't mild. If she stops breathing, she won't." Maya snapped, but her voice cracked. "Dad said she'll just sleep. He said it's better this way. He said she's confused and unpredictable." Unpredictable, a word my father had used about me my entire childhood. "She just needs rest until after tomorrow," Maya insisted. "Rest," the man repeated, incredulous. "This is sedation." I tried to scream, to warn him, to plead, but nothing came out, not even a sound, only trapped, frantic breath. Maya took a shaky step forward and lowered her voice. "Please, just do what Dad hired you to do." Hired? My pulse hammered even harder. Had he hired this man to evaluate me, watch me, test me, silence me? I was hired to observe the stranger spat. Not drug anyone, not stage anything, not... He gestured helplessly at my limp form. "This..." Maya's voice broke. "Dad said if we don't get the court to see the truth tomorrow, Julia will take everything. The ranch, the house, our future." There it was, the motive. My father had poisoned her with fear. Fed her a story where I was the threat, where I was the villain, where I was stealing from the family. She believed it. She needed to believe it. For him. "She's been stealing for years," Maya whispered, repeating the lie as if it were scripture. Dad showed me the withdrawal slips. She emptied their accounts. The stranger's voice softened, but his tone was tense. "And did you ever ask her?" "I didn't have to," she said. My chest tightened with something sharp: betrayal, sadness, fury. I would have given anything to move to look her in the eye and make her see the truth. "You gave her something you didn't even understand," the stranger said. "I trusted Dad," she whispered. She meant it, and that terrified me more than any sedative. The man exhaled, long and pained. "I'm done here. I'm leaving. You can tell your father whatever you want." "What do you mean you're leaving?" Maya stepped in front of him. "He'll be furious." "Then let him be furious." The stranger growled. He brushed past her. But he didn't leave. I heard movement outside the room. Maya following him, voices dropping to whispers. Then silence. The stranger's footsteps faded toward the back door. A moment later I heard it swing open. Close. And then he was gone. I was alone with my paralysis, with my dread, with the meaning of everything I'd heard. They weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to eliminate me. Minutes passed, long torturous stretches of listening to the house breathe. The wind rattled the windows. Somewhere a floorboard creaked. My heartbeat grew slower, steadier as the sedative cooled in my bloodstream. Slowly, so slowly, I wasn't sure it was real. I felt a flicker in my fingertips. A tiny twitch, like the faintest spark of electricity. I focused every ounce of will into that spark. The twitch came again. Pain raced up my arms like 1,000 needles stabbing from beneath the skin. But the pain meant life. The pain meant nerves were waking. The pain meant I wasn't gone yet. By the time feeling reached my elbows, I could hear new footsteps. Not the stranger. Not Maya. These were heavier, determined, familiar. My father. He didn't bother knocking. The door opened wider, letting in a slice of light and his shadow. I froze again, not from paralysis this time, but from terror. He stepped inside only a foot or two, just enough for me to see his silhouette clearly. His voice was quiet, controlled. "Is she out?" Maya's voice drifted faintly from down the hall. "Yes, she's asleep." He exhaled a satisfied breath. "Good." Then he said something that chilled me more than the paralysis ever had. "Make sure she stays that way until the hearing. After that, everything falls into place. Everything falls into place." He left, closing the door behind him. I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling the sedative's grip loosen inch by inch. Rage lit inside me like a spark inside gasoline. I wasn't dying. I wasn't disappearing. I wasn't letting them take my life, my name, my identity. Not now. Not ever. 10 more minutes passed before I could bend my fingers. 15 before I could turn my head. 30 before I could push myself to my side. My breathing was ragged sweat chilling my back as I fought my body for control. But every inch I reclaimed brought strength back to my chest. I needed to move quietly, carefully. If they realized I was waking up, they might finish what they started. With shaking arms, I pushed myself upright. The room swayed. I waited until it steadied. My legs trembled but held as I stood. Something white on the floor caught my eye. Another card. Another one from the stranger. As if he'd dropped it on purpose. "Leave as soon as you can" was written on the back in rushed handwriting. He knew. He tried to stop it. He failed, but he warned me. And now it was up to me to save myself. I gripped the edge of the nightstand and forced my legs to move one step then another. Every inch felt like miles. My balance wobbled, my breath shook. But I reached the door. I pressed my ear to the hallway. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I slipped out, careful not to let the door creak. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every corner felt alive with secrets. But I kept going one unsteady step at a time. Because the only thing scarier than staying in that house was never walking out of it. The doorknob felt colder than my own skin as I eased it open and slipped into the hallway, every muscle trembling from the effort of moving a body that still wasn't fully mine. The house was dark except for a thin strip of light beneath my father's office door. My breath caught. If he stepped into the hall right now, if he saw me awake, it would all be over. The sedative still fogged the edges of my vision, making the wallpaper ripple softly as I pressed myself against the wall. A floorboard creaked under my heel. I froze, waited, counted slowly to 10. Nothing. My legs wobbled as I made my way down the hall, each step a negotiation between will and weakness. The air in the house felt wrong, heavy watching, like even the walls knew I wasn't supposed to be up. When I reached the front door, I wrapped my hand around the knob and turned it slowly. It let out a sharp metallic click loud enough to make my heart slam against my ribs. I clamped down on a gasp. Again I waited. Silence. Then a whisper of wind from under the door told me I had a chance. I stepped outside into the cold Wyoming air, the night biting into my skin so sharply it nearly brought tears to my eyes. My breath came out in visible clouds as I staggered down the porch steps. My legs almost buckled halfway, and I had to grip the railing until the dizziness passed. The gravel in the driveway crunched beneath my unsteady feet. My father's truck was gone. Maya's car, too. Only the old family pickup sat crooked near the barn, rusted, dented, but familiar. "Please," I whispered to whatever force was listening. "Just let it start." I fumbled with the door handle, climbed in, and searched the ignition with shaking hands. The keys were dangling from the dashboard hook, of course. No one expected me to go anywhere. No one thought I could. I jammed the key in and twisted. The engine groaned on the first try. On the second, on the third, it roared to life loud enough to echo across the entire property. Fear shot through me so sharply I tasted metal. I slammed the door shut, threw the truck into reverse, and backed out onto the dirt road, my vision tunneling with each bump and jolt. The sedative made the headlights blur at the edges, but I kept going, clinging to the steering wheel like it was the last solid thing in my life. 20 minutes later, I spotted the glowing lights of a rundown gas station, one of those forgotten places with flickering bulbs, and an old payphone bolted to the wall near the bathrooms. I pulled in the truck, screeching against loose gravel, and cut the engine. I exhaled shakily. I wasn't safe, but I was alive. My fingers brushed the card in my pocket. Tyler Boone, private investigator. I didn't trust him, but I needed answers more than I needed comfort. I stumbled out of the truck and toward the payphone, bracing myself against the cold metal frame. My hands shook so badly I dropped the coins twice before getting them into the slot. The phone rang 4 times. Then a groggy voice answered. "Boone. Tyler." I whispered, my throat tight. "It's Julia Ramirez." There was a beat of silence. Then, "You're conscious." "Yes." "That shouldn't be possible yet." I squeezed my eyes shut. The drug wore off. I heard everything last night. My sister, my father, you. I need to know what's going on. On the other end, Tyler exhaled deeply, like someone bracing for a blow. "Where are you?" "A gas station on Route 11. My breath fogged the receiver. I ran. I had to. If I stayed. "You did the right thing," he said quickly. "Listen, I wasn't there to hurt you. I didn't even know they were using a sedative. I was hired by your father 3 weeks ago." My stomach twisted. "Hired to do what?" "To investigate you." A chill rolled over me, colder than the night air. Why, he said you were mentally unstable and financially irresponsible. He needed documentation for a court case. "The guardianship hearing," I murmured. "Yes." His tone hardened. But when I started digging, nothing matched what he told me. I swallowed. "What did you find?" "That your credit is excellent. You've held the same job for years. You have no arrests, no history of psychiatric issues, nothing that even remotely suggests instability." I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the phone booth. So he lied. He lied about everything Tyler said, including the part where he claimed you were stealing money. I've never taken a cent from my parents, I know, because I traced the withdrawals. His voice darkened. The signatures were forged. Every dime went to accounts controlled by your father. My mouth went dry. How much $287,000 over the last 3 years alone? He paused. Your father drained his own retirement funds and pinned the blame on you. My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the phone with both hands to stay upright. Why? I whispered. Tyler hesitated, then said, because he needed a scapegoat. Silence stretched between us. Only the hum of the gas station lights filled the air. Julia, he said finally, voice softer, it gets worse. I closed my eyes. Tell me. You mentioned an IRS letter, $85,000 in unreported income. Yes, that wasn't a mistake. He's been using your identity for years. Tax fraud, loans, credit lines. I found paperwork for a mortgage taken out in your name in 2019. My breath caught painfully. A mortgage. For what a piece of equipment he used for the ranch. His tone grew colder. He used your clean credit to cover his own debts. I felt sick. He filed for guardianship last week, Tyler continued as a preemptive strike. If he got legal control of you, you would have no ability to challenge any of it. I whispered. He never even told me. He didn't want you to know, Tyler said. He listed the Wyoming address as your residence, so the notice would come here, not your place in Oregon. He intercepted the mail. Everything clicked. The secrecy, the tension, the tea, the fear in Maya's eyes. Tyler wasn't finished. And there's something else, he said. Your grandmother. My pulse stumbled. What about her? Before she died, she filed a will. The original left her entire property to you. The world seemed to tilt. She left it to me, not to your father. Not to Maya. You. Tyler's voice hardened. He filed a false affidavit claiming she died without a will. He stole your inheritance. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to breathe. My grandmother, I whispered. She told me before she died, she told me to keep a metal tin box safe. That I'd understand someday. That box likely contains proof, Tyler said. Copies, letters, maybe even the real will. My legs weakened further. It's in Oregon, in my closet. Then that's where we need to go next. I looked out at the empty highway. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Tyler, I asked, voice raw, why are you helping me? A pause. Then, because when I saw you lying there last night, I realized your father didn't want documentation. His tone cracked for the first time. He wanted silence. A trembling breath escaped me. You need to get somewhere safe, he said. I'll meet you in Oregon. Text me the address. I whispered, thank you. Julia, he said before I hung up. You're not crazy. You're not unstable. You're a victim of a long-calculated fraud. And now that you know the truth, your father won't stop. I stepped outside the booth, the cold wind whipping my hair across my face. Then neither will I said. I ended the call. The sky was beginning to glow faintly. Dawn. The start of the day that was supposed to be my undoing. Not anymore. Now it would be the day I began fighting back. I climbed into the truck, heart pounding with fear and fury, and started the engine. If I could survive what they'd done to me, I could survive whatever came next. I drove through Wyoming's endless stretches of open land, with the gas station shrinking in my rearview mirror, Tyler's voice echoing in my ears long after the call ended. The sky was lightening into a bruised purple as dawn crept over the horizon. My muscles still trembled from the drug, every jolt of the old truck sending waves of dizziness through my skull, but I kept driving. I didn't dare stop, not until I was out of reach. The heater sputtered warm air over my frozen hands as my mind tried to process everything Tyler had told me. Fraud, identity theft, guardianship, the stolen inheritance, the lie about my grandmother's will. It felt like trying to comprehend an explosion while still standing inside the fire. My father had been planning this for years. Years. The man who stood at the head of our dinner table, the man who spoke of loyalty and respect and family duty, had been quietly constructing a trap around me brick by brick, hoping I wouldn't notice until the walls had sealed shut. And Maya, my little sister, The one I once braided hair for the girl who used to sneak into my bed during storms had gone along with it. Whether out of ignorance, fear, or blind devotion didn't matter anymore. She had poured the tea. She had whispered instructions. She had left the door ajar for a stranger to step inside. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Betrayal ran cold through me, deeper than the winter wind slicing across the plains. 2 hours into the drive, the last of the sedative's heaviness began to lift from my limbs. My thoughts sharpened. Fear settled into something fiercer resolve. At the state line, I stopped long enough to buy coffee, splash cold water on my face, and text Tyler the address of my apartment in Oregon. My hands shook as I typed, not from the drug this time, but from exhaustion and the weight of what waited ahead. When I got back into the truck, the sun had fully risen, casting long golden rays across the fields. Dawn had never looked so much like survival. I drove all day, stopping only for gas and water. The more miles I put between myself and my parents' ranch, the easier I breathed. My heart still beat too fast, but at least it beat for a future I might actually have a chance to reclaim. By nightfall, Oregon's pine forests surrounded me, their familiar silhouettes rising like dark guardians on either side of the highway. I rolled down the window slightly, inhaling the resinous scent of fir and earth, my scent, my life, the life I built without my father's help or permission. When I finally pulled into the parking lot of my apartment complex, every muscle in my body trembled with relief and fear, and something close to grief. Home had never looked more like refuge. I parked, grabbed my bag, and climbed the stairs with aching legs. The hallway lights flickered softly as I approached my door. A shadow shifted near the railing. I tensed, but when the figure stepped into the light, I recognized him immediately. Tyler Boone stood there, hands in the pockets of his denim jacket, eyes shadowed with fatigue. He looked nothing like the threatening silhouette I'd seen in my bedroom doorway. In daylight, he looked conflicted, human, troubled. "Julia," he said, voice low. I unlocked my door and motioned him inside. "You got here fast. I drove straight from Wyoming after talking to you," he said. Didn't stop. He followed me into the apartment, small, tidy, filled with plants and secondhand furniture, and the kind of quiet I'd built intentionally. The contrast between this place and the suffocating chaos of my childhood home was so stark it almost hurt. Tyler scanned the room quickly, assessing without being intrusive. "Old habits, probably." "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm here." He nodded once. "That's something." We sat at my small kitchen table. The overhead light buzzed faintly. Tyler pulled out a folder thick with papers, copies, notes, printouts. "I brought everything I've collected," he said. "Every document proving the fraud, every false signature, every bank transfer." I swallowed. "Thank you." He hesitated before speaking again. "I need you to know something. When your father hired me, he made it sound like he was worried about you, like he wanted to protect you. I believed him. At first. I watched him carefully. His jaw tightened. But the more I dug, the less sense anything made, he continued. Your life didn't match the story he told. And when I saw you in that bed drugged unconscious, I realized exactly what he was doing, what he wanted me to be a part of." A muscle in his cheek twitched. I'm not proud of the fact that I didn't see it sooner. "You warned me," I said. "You put those cards in my room." "I shouldn't have been there at all," he said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I stood. "I need to get something." I went to the bedroom closet, reached to the back, and pulled out an old metal tin box, the one my grandmother had given me the year I turned 19. The one she told me never to open in front of my father. I brought it to the table and sat down slowly, almost reverently. "This," I said, "is what my grandmother left me before she died." Tyler leaned forward slightly. "That's what I was hoping." "Open it." My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were 2 items, a folded letter, and a thick, creased document bound with a faded ribbon. I unfolded the letter first. Recognized her looping script instantly. Her words blurred as I began to read, but I forced myself to focus. My dearest Julia, if you're reading this, it means the truth has finally come to light, and I am deeply sorry for the burden it places on you. Your father cannot be trusted with this estate. He has made choices in his life that have brought hardship upon others, and I fear what he may do after I am gone. You are the strongest one in our family. The house, the land, and my accounts are meant for you. I trust you to do what's right. My throat tightened. Tyler looked at me, expression unreadable. What's the other document? With slow, deliberate movements, I untied the ribbon and unfolded the thick paper. The creases revealed the official seal, the notarized signature, the heading, Last Will and Testament of Eleanor Pierce, my grandmother, the true will, the one leaving everything to me. I felt my breath stop for several seconds. Tyler leaned closer, scanning the details. This is everything we need. This proves probate fraud, identity theft, tax crimes, everything. I stared at the document, the reality sinking deeper and deeper until it ached. For the first time in hours, the weight of everything crashed into me. I pressed a hand to my forehead, trying to steady my breathing. I can't believe he did this, I whispered. To me. To her. People like your father, Tyler said quietly, don't see family as something to love. They see it as something to use. His words hit hard because I'd spent 34 years trying not to believe them. I thought if I worked hard, if I stayed out of trouble, if I didn't make waves. My voice cracked. I thought eventually he'd see me. Tyler's gaze softened. He saw you, Julia. He just saw you as a resource. Tears stung my eyes, hot and humiliating. I wiped them away quickly, but Tyler shook his head. You don't need to hide that, he said. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He spread the documents across the table in a neat line. Here's the plan. Tomorrow we take everything to an attorney. A good one. Someone who specializes in fraud and inheritance cases. Once this evidence is submitted, your father's petition collapses. And Maya, I whispered. She's a pawn, Tyler said, but she's still responsible for what she did. I nodded slowly, feeling the truth settle in my bones. For a moment we simply sat there in silence, two people in the dim light of a small apartment, surrounded by paper proof of a 15-year betrayal. Then Tyler spoke again, softer this time. You're not alone in this anymore. I lifted my gaze to his. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to believe him. Because sitting here safe awake, breathing in my own home, I realized something. They had tried to take everything from me, but I still had the truth. And now I had someone willing to help me fight back. By the time morning light filtered through my apartment windows, the exhaustion of the past 48 hours sat heavy in my bones. I barely slept, drifting in and out, afraid that if I closed my eyes too long, the paralysis would return, that I'd wake back in Wyoming helpless and drugged with Maya, whispering instructions in the hallway. But every time my eyes opened, I saw Oregon, my apartment, the small table with my grandmother's will spread across it. Tyler, asleep in the chair opposite me, his arms folded across his chest, head tilted back, guarding the evidence like he expected someone to break in during the night. He didn't look like the silhouette that had once terrified me, the man kneeling beside my bed in the dark. In daylight, he looked human, flawed, haunted, and maybe, just maybe, trustworthy. I sat up slowly, my muscles still stiff from the sedative. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself a small breath of relief. I was out of the house, I was alive, and I had the truth. Tyler stirred as I poured water into a cup. His eyes snapped open, instantly alert in a way only people who've lived through too much can be. You okay? He asked, voice still rough from sleep. I'm here, I said. That's the best I've got right now. That's enough. He stood, stretching muscles that had clearly spent the night tense. We need to move fast today. Once your father realizes you're gone, he'll try to spin the story. He'll tell everyone I ran, that I'm unstable. He's already laid that groundwork, Tyler said grimly. but we're going to tear it apart." I nodded and opened my laptop. Tyler grabbed his folder. We spread everything across the table again. The forged signatures, the bank statements, the mortgage paperwork, the IRS notices, the copies of my grandmother's letters, and finally the will itself. "This," Tyler said, "tapping the will is the linchpin. It proves your father committed probate fraud. Once we involve an attorney, your father won't just lose the guardianship petition, he'll face criminal charges." A tremor of adrenaline ran through me. For years I'd believed the silence in my family was personal, that my father simply didn't value me. But this wasn't emotional neglect. It was strategy, deception, preparation for a financial takeover that began long before I ever realized. "What do we do first?" I asked. "Find an attorney who knows how to dismantle abusers like your father." Tyler grabbed his phone. "I know someone in Portland. She specializes in inheritance and financial abuse cases." Within minutes, he had a name and an appointment. We packed the evidence into bags, locked the apartment, and drove toward Portland in my car, his truck left behind for now. The roads blurred past pine trees and rolling hills, Oregon gray skies stretching endlessly overhead. I watched the world pass by, fingers gripping the seatbelt, mind racing with questions I wasn't ready to ask. Tyler glanced at me once or twice. "You're thinking hard, trying to fit 34 years back together with new information." He nodded. "That's going to take time." "Why did my grandmother leave her estate to me?" I whispered. "Why not split it between me and Maya?" "Because she trusted you," he said. And she didn't trust him. It made sense. Painfully, heartbreakingly so. I remembered her hands, warm and steady, pressing the tin box into mine the last time I saw her alive. "Keep this safe, Julia. One day you'll understand." I did now. We reached Portland just before noon. Tyler parked outside a tall office building with glass doors and clean lines. The sign on the front read, "Chen and Associates, Probate and Fraud Litigation." A thrill of hope pierced through the fog of fear. Maybe this was where the tide finally turned. Inside, the receptionist led us to a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A woman in a navy suit, sharp-eyed, mid-40s, exuding calm authority, stood to greet us. "I'm attorney Sandra Chen," she said, shaking my hand firmly. "Tyler called me this morning. Sit. Tell me everything." I felt myself exhale for the first time in hours. We told her everything, every detail, every whisper, every forged signature, every sedative-laced drink, every lie my father spoon-fed into my sister until she couldn't tell reality from manipulation. Sandra didn't interrupt. She took notes rapidly, eyes narrowing at all the right places: fraud, drugging, guardianship, stolen inheritance. When Tyler placed the will on her desk, she picked it up like it was a weapon. "This," she said, her voice a blade, "is going to dismantle him." Hope surged through me, sharp and bright. "Your father is facing multiple criminal charges," she continued, laying the will beside a legal pad. "Probate fraud, identity theft, financial abuse, coercion, and potentially endangerment. His guardianship petition is illegal, and we can prove he filed it with intent to defraud the court." "What happens next?" I asked. "We submit an emergency motion to stop the guardianship hearing immediately. Then we file a petition to reopen your grandmother's probate case and pursue criminal charges through the state and IRS. This is going to be messy for him." I swallowed. "And for me, for you." She gave me a steady look. "This is the beginning of getting your life back." She organized the documents into neat stacks. Then she glanced at Tyler. "You did the right thing bringing this to me." He nodded silently. Sandra turned back to me. "Julia, once your father realizes the guardianship is blocked, he may try to retaliate. He may contact you directly. Do not engage. Let everything go through me." I nodded shakily. "Good. Go home. Rest. I'll call you when the motion is filed." As we walked out of her office, something in my chest shifted. A sense of alignment. A sense of strength I didn't recognize in myself. For the first time in days, my hands had stopped shaking. In the elevator, I leaned my head against the wall and let out a long breath. "It's happening," I whispered. "We're doing this." Tyler nodded, his voice quiet. "You're not alone anymore, Julia. You have someone fighting on your side." The truth of that hit deeper than I expected. We walked to the car in silence, the Portland air cool and damp around us. I started the engine. But before I could pull out of the parking lot, my phone buzzed. The caller ID made my stomach drop. "Dad," my fingers hovered over the screen. "Don't answer," Tyler said gently. I declined the call. 3 seconds later, another call, then a third, then a text notification. I opened it despite Tyler's warning. "Where are you? This is a family matter. Come home and fix what you've broken. Fix what I broke." My breath hitched. The phone buzzed again. Another message: "If you go to a lawyer, you will regret it." My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles went white. Tyler reached over and gently pushed the phone face down on my lap. "This is what abusers do," he said softly. "They panic when they lose control." I stared out the windshield as a strange calm settled over me, cool, steady, resolute. "I'm not running anymore," I said. "Not from him, not from any of it." "We'll face him," Tyler said, "with evidence, with the truth, and with the law." I nodded. On the drive home, neither of us spoke. But I didn't need words to understand the shift happening inside me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to win my father's approval. I was preparing to destroy the lies he built. And I wasn't afraid. When I woke the next morning, the air in my apartment felt different, charged, tense, as if the walls themselves sensed the shift in my life. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking to dread or confusion. I was waking to purpose. The truth was on my side now, and the law was moving with it. But fear doesn't leave that easily. It lingered beneath my ribs like a shadow, reminding me of everything my father had tried to take. Tyler was already awake, sitting at my kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee. He slid one toward me. "You're going to need this," he said quietly. I took it, the warm ceramic steadying my shaking hands. "Any updates?" He nodded toward my phone. "Check your messages." I hesitated before picking it up. The first notification was from Attorney Chen. "Motion to halt guardianship petition filed at 7:32 a.m. Court acknowledged receipt. Stand by for next steps." My heart thudded with relief. One strike against my father. One brick pulled out of the wall he'd built around me. But the next notifications weren't from her. They were from him. "Stop this nonsense. Come home now. You aren't well. We can fix this as a family." I scrolled. "If you ruin your sister's life over your delusions, you will pay for it." My throat tightened. More messages. "The court will side with me. You are proving you're unstable. Turn around before you destroy everything." Tyler leaned over. Classic manipulation. Threats wrapped in concern. I exhaled shakily. "It still hits hard." "Of course it does," he said. "He raised you to believe his voice was truth." For the first time, I didn't reply. I didn't defend my father. I just sat in silence, letting the truth settle. At 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Caller ID blocked number. I ignored it. A voicemail appeared seconds later, and then another. On the third one, something inside me cracked. I hit play. My father's voice filled the room, low and seething. "Julia, you have no idea what you're doing. You're confused. You've always been confused. Running away doesn't change the fact that you need help. You need family. You need stability. I can provide that. But if you keep going down this path, I won't be able to protect you from the consequences." Protect. A word he'd weaponized my whole life. I deleted the voicemail without saving it. Tyler watched me carefully. "You ready for the next step?" I nodded. "Let's finish tearing down the rest of his story." We spent the next few hours gathering every piece of documentation from my identity records, bank statements, tax transcripts, employment letters, email logs. My apartment floor became a huge mosaic of paper, like we were assembling the pieces of a fractured life. At noon, Attorney Chen called. "Julia, are you sitting down?" she asked. Tyler put the phone on speaker so we could both hear.